appointment as a local official in Lebanon, Syria area. That's why it's called Herod of Chalcis. But after Agrippa I dies under odd circumstances, and again all this is in Josephus, Herod of Chalcis comes in 44 AD, around the time of the famine actually, and he reigns till 49 AD as a king. Why does Agrippa I and his brother Herod of Chalcis, why are they allowed to be kings? And also Agrippa I's son, Agrippa II, is a king, but he's only a king in name. The governors have taken over again. It's sort of a tandem at this point. There are Roman governors and there is a Herodian, quote, Jewish king. Now, Agrippa I attempts to be so-called Jewish in some ways. He tries to ingratiate himself with the Jewish crowd by being as careful as he can about the Mosaic law and so on. The other Herodians don't, and Herod of Chalcis certainly doesn't. And Herod of Chalcis, Josephus tells us, imprisoned a lot of people and executed a lot of people. So this sounds a lot like Herod of Chalcis, but the place Acts puts him in, it looks more like Agrippa I is intended here, because at the end of this chapter he dies, and the death is the death of Agrippa I, or similar to the death of Agrippa I. He's acting on a stage, and he's dressed in gold or something, and then he gets a stroke or apoplexy and dies. It's the end of, I think, we'll get to it, chapter 12 of Acts. So this Herod seems to be a double person, Herod of Chalcis and Agrippa I, all combined in one. At least as far as this is a problem with the writing, and that's why these are secondary materials. These are not primary materials. They've gone through, a certain sort of transmission process, and may have, as Josephus says, been garbled in the process. We'll see what we think. Anyway, so he beheads this other James just in time to introduce the other James. That is, there's two Jameses, as we've heard earlier in this book. One, the brother of John, and the other, the brother of Jesus, which is a strange sort of tandem there, two brothers of somebody. So in any case, then Peter is imprisoned and he escapes, and the guards are all executed because of his miraculous escape, according to the book of Acts. It's not presented here. It's chapter 10. We are talking about Herod Agrippa again. So he thinks Herod the king is Herod Agrippa, because that's the sequence in Acts. I'm not sure it is Herod Agrippa, but in any case, this is Agrippa I. He talks about, let's see, I don't think there's anything here that really that you couldn't read for yourself, but he does talk about the Herod Agrippa, or Agrippa I's death here from Josephus. I, your God, now commanded to depart from this life, and so on and so forth. I felt the pain through his heart. A sudden pang seized his bowels and tormented him. This is the picture of Agrippa I's death in Josephus. At length, overpowered by the pain of his bowels for 4 days, he ended his life in his 54th year, in the 7th year of his reign. He reigned really as king under Caesar for 4 years. So he died in 44. And Philip's tetrarchy had been given him, so he was a king. Well, Acts also presents his death in a slightly different way, but it is a theatrical death of some kind. So it looks like Acts is talking about Agrippa I. Anyway, these are fine points we don't need. Let's move along. Back to Theudas. Concerning the impostor Theudas, he says that Gamaliel in Acts talks about Theudas arose, and he was somebody. Josephus in the Antiquities, book 20, tells us who Theudas is. So he gives the actual testimony here, which is what I would do. So Eusebius and I would be on the same wavelength to actually go to and give the real material. here Theudas persuades during the governorship of Fadus, which is around the time of Agrippa I's death, around the time of the famine, in the 44-45 period. Now, I think it's interesting because to my mind, the person beheaded in this period is Theudas. Josephus is careful to give us all the executions in these periods of any note. I'm sure there were others, but these were the ones of important executions. So notice how Eusebius catalogs these things. There's Theudas, and then there's Helen. And all these events seem to be, and there's the famine. Now, Acts will tie these things together too in its own way. But Eusebius is well aware, and he depends on Josephus and others, that these things are all connected. One of the things that happens during this famine, it looks like, is that Theudas leads the multitude out of the country to pass the River Jordan. We have an exodus. And he claimed to be a prophet, and that the Jordan would open at his demand. In the Bible, who parts the River Jordan in order to cross? Most people don't know this episode. It's in the book of Joshua. Joshua leads the Hebrew people into Palestine by parting the waters of the River Jordan. So this is Theudas is doing a reverse Joshua, or wants to do a reverse Joshua. And the Romans don't like this, as they don't like any of these things. So, you know, it isn't because these pretenders and agitators and imposters, as people like Josephus and others call them, that the Romans, like Pontius Pilate, sympathize with them. They hate them. They destroy them at every moment. I honestly think that Jesus is one of these people, if we can pinpoint him with any precision, and that the Romans executed him as they did all the others. It wasn't that they liked Jesus. They don't feel this way towards Paul. One, because Paul is a good Roman citizen. I don't think Jesus ever pulled out his Roman citizenship and asked the Romans for any pity or mercy or favor. But Paul does it constantly. So obviously, in fact, the Romans send military contingents to rescue Paul and take him under guard to rescue him from the Jewish crowd. That's why I consider the Jesus picture of Jesus in the Gospels influenced by what actually happens in Paul's life. You say, oh, you can't prove that. No, of course not. But this is this is what really happens to agitators who present themselves as prophets and want to lead the people out into the wilderness. There, as Josephus says, to show them the signs of their impending redemption. Josephus says it on two occasions, once in the war and once in the Antiquities, that at this time there were lots of imposters, prophets, and other people leading the people out into the wilderness to show them the